the heart of an ancient forest, three friends embark on a journey to uncover the mysterious glowstones said to hold unimaginable power. But as they venture deeper, the challenges they face are not just about courage. They must confront their deepest fears and doubts. Will their friendship survive the trials ahead? Will they emerge stronger or be torn apart by the very forces they seek to control? The true test lies not in the stones they seek, but in the strength of their bond. Join us on this emotional journey of friendship, fear, and sacrifice. This is their story. In a small village, nestled between towering mountains and the vast expanse of an ancient forest, there were three inseparable friends: Evan, Maya, and Leo. These three had grown up together under the shade of ancient trees, their childhood filled with games and adventures that took them from one corner of the forest to the other. But the forest wasn't just a place to play. It was a great secret, a place full of untold stories waiting to be discovered. That summer, when the warm breezes of the season swept through the leaves, Evan heard a story from his grandmother, one that he had never heard before. It was about a hidden part of the forest where ancient trees stood tall and wise, and in the heart of it all lay a secret, the glowstones. These glowing stones, shimmering softly in the heart of the forest, were said to grant the possessor the ability to see the future, understand life's deepest truths, and even heal wounds beyond the physical. It was a legend that had intrigued the three friends, but no one in the village had ever dared venture deep into the forest to search for them. But Evan, with his strong curiosity, couldn't help but think about it. Every night, he would lie awake, imagining the glowstones, the ancient powers they held, and the challenges one would face in finding them. His greatest dream was to be the first to step into that part of the forest, uncovering the secrets it held. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of gold and pink, Evan approached Maya and Leo with excitement in his eyes. The decision was made. It was time to embark on their adventure. "What do you think, Maya, Leo?" he asked, his voice slightly trembling with anticipation. "Should we go find the glowstones, Maya?" The cautious one bit her lip, her eyes thoughtful. "The forest is full of dangers, Evan. But if there's a chance to truly understand its secrets, to learn its heart, I'll follow you. Together, we've always faced the unknown." Leo, the boldest of the trio, grinned wide. "I've been waiting for this day. Let's go. This forest can't hide its secrets from us forever." The next morning, they set off together, each of them carrying both excitement and apprehension in their hearts. As the sun rose, casting light on the dewdrops on the leaves, the trio ventured deeper into the heart of the forest, their hearts full of hope and uncertainty. They didn't know what lay ahead, but the path was theirs to walk, and they would walk it together. The deeper they ventured into the forest, the quieter the world became. The familiar sounds of their village faded into the distance, replaced by the soft rustling of leaves and the faint calls of unseen birds high in the trees. The sunlight filtered through the dense canopy above cast dappled patterns on the ground. The air smelled fresh, earthy, and alive. As they moved further into the forest, it felt as though the world was holding its breath, waiting for them to discover what lay ahead. Maya, ever the cautious one, kept her eyes darting between the towering trees and the winding path beneath her feet. She had always been aware of the forest's beauty, but now something felt different. The forest was no longer just a place to explore. It had become a place of mystery, as though it held secrets just beyond reach. Leo, the eager one, darted ahead with a gleam in his eyes. He was always the first to act often, without thinking, drawn to the thrill of the unknown. Today was no different. His wings fluttered excitedly as he darted from tree to tree, never missing an opportunity to explore the next bend, to discover something new. "This is amazing," he shouted over his shoulder. Who knew the forest could be so beautiful? Evan, who had always been more of a dreamer, lingered behind. He walked at his own pace, taking in the surroundings with quiet awe. His gaze wandered over the moss-covered rocks and the soft, fluttering leaves. The forest seemed to be alive in a way he had never noticed before. Each step felt like a step into something ancient, something that had been waiting for him to uncover. He smiled, feeling a deep connection to the place, as if the forest itself were welcoming him. As the day stretched on, the forest grew denser, the trees more intertwined. The path they had been following grew fainter, the trail harder to see. Maya paused, turning back to the others. "We should stick together," she said. "It's easy to get lost in here if we're not careful." Leo rolled his eyes, but slowed his pace. "Come on, Maya. We're fine. It's just a little more exploring. Nothing we can't handle." Evan caught up with them and nodded. Leo's right, but Maya's also right. Let's be cautious. We're in this together. They continued moving through the ever-thickening trees. The sunlight grew dimmer, the air cooler, as they descended into a part of the forest that felt both familiar and strange. The birds had quieted, and the only sound was the soft crunch of their footsteps on the forest floor. Evan's mind wandered back to the story his grandmother had told him, the story of the Glowstones, the glowing orbs said to be hidden deep in the forest, granting those who found them wisdom beyond measure. He had always believed the tale to be just that, a tale. But now, with every step he took into the heart of the forest, he wondered if there might be more truth to it than he had imagined. Was this part of the forest where the stones lay? Would they find them? Or would the forest reveal something even more extraordinary than they expected? The path ahead was becoming increasingly difficult to follow. Branches tangled together, and thick undergrowth made progress slow. The once vibrant forest floor was now shadowed and dark, filled with mysterious sounds that sent shivers down their spines. Yet there was an unspoken sense of unity between them, as if the bond they shared made the journey feel less daunting. Whatever challenges the forest would throw their way, they would face them together. Suddenly, Leo stopped in his tracks. He pointed ahead, his eyes wide with excitement. "Look, I think I see something." The others rushed forward, and there in the distance stood a massive stone archway, half hidden by thick vines and ivy. It looked ancient, weathered by time, but it was unmistakable. The archway seemed to shimmer faintly in the growing twilight, as if beckoning them forward. "This has to be it," Evan whispered, feeling his heart race with excitement. "We've found the entrance." Maya stepped closer, her gaze wary. "It feels strange, like we're crossing into another world." Leo was already moving toward the archway, eager to explore. "What are we waiting for?" "Let's go." Evan caught his arm. "We don't know what lies beyond this. We need to be careful." Maya nodded in agreement, her wings fluttering gently. "Let's take our time. We're in this together. Remember, the forest has its secrets." With a deep breath, the trio stepped forward, crossing beneath the ancient archway. As soon as they did, the air seemed to shift. The forest around them felt different, more alive, as if they had entered a space untouched by time. The path ahead seemed to stretch on, infinitely filled with promise and uncertainty. As the three friends passed through the stone gate, the atmosphere around them seemed to shift immediately. The ancient trees loomed higher, their branches thicker, creating a canopy so dense that sunlight barely made it through. The air grew still, eerily quiet, as if the entire forest had suddenly fallen silent. Although they could still hear the soft rustling of leaves, it felt as if every sound in the forest had become distant. Every step they took seemed to echo, amplifying the silence that surrounded them. Maya, always the cautious one, couldn't shake the growing sense of unease. She had always known the forest's beauty, but now it felt different. It was as if they were no longer just visitors. This forest had become a place of deep mystery, testing their resolve with every step. Leo, ever the optimist, was oblivious to Maya's discomfort. He darted ahead, excited by the adventure. His wings fluttered with eagerness as he flitted from tree to tree, exploring every nook and cranny. Leo, ever brave and bold, found joy in the unknown. But today, there was a subtle difference. Though outwardly confident, there was a strange sense of hesitation in his heart as he ventured deeper into the forest. Evan the dreamer walked slowly, his eyes scanning the surroundings. Every moss-covered stone, every fluttering leaf seemed to carry a deeper meaning. He felt a connection to the place, as if the forest was calling to him, urging him to discover something profound. It wasn't just a place to explore, it was alive, and he was beginning to understand its language. The deeper they went, the more the path became difficult. Large rocks blocked their way, and thick underbrush made progress slow. The once bright forest was now darker, and the atmosphere felt increasingly charged with a sense of anticipation. It was as though the forest was leading them somewhere, but they didn't know where. Suddenly, Leo stopped and pointed ahead. "Look, I see something." The others rushed forward, and sure enough, there was a clearing up ahead, and in the center of it, an ancient stone archway, partially covered by ivy and moss. It stood tall, weathered by time, but still intact. It seemed to shimmer, faintly, as though it were a doorway to another world, beckoning them forward. "This must be it," Evan whispered, feeling his heart race with excitement. "We've found the entrance." Maya stepped closer, her eyes narrowed in caution. "It feels strange, like we're stepping into another world." Leo, eager to press on, was already moving toward the archway. "What are we waiting for? Let's go." Evan grabbed Leo's arm. "We don't know what's ahead. Let's make sure we stay together." Maya nodded in agreement. "The forest is testing us. We're not just looking for the glowstones. We need to protect each other, too." Together, they walked beneath the ancient archway. As soon as they passed through, the air shifted again. The forest around them seemed to change, as though they had crossed into a different realm, a place untouched by time. The path ahead stretched infinitely, full of promise and mystery. The leaves on the trees whispered as if welcoming them, but also warning them that the journey was far from over. As the trio ventured further into the heart of the forest, the air grew heavier, thicker, with the weight of what was to come. The path ahead seemed to twist and turn, and the shadows of the trees grew longer, darker, as if they were leading them deeper into a forgotten world. The forest was no longer just a collection of trees and plants. It had become a living entity, guiding them, testing them. Maya, ever cautious, kept her eyes open, her senses alert. She could feel it now. More than ever, the forest was watching them. The quiet was almost oppressive, and the sense of unease grew stronger the farther they walked. It wasn't the kind of fear that came from danger, but the kind that crept into your bones, whispering that something unknown was ahead. Leo, on the other hand, was more excited than ever. His eyes were bright with curiosity as he darted ahead, eager to discover what lay beyond the next turn. His natural optimism was a balm to the growing tension. "This is it," he shouted as he bounced up and down. "I can feel it. We're getting closer." Evan walked between his friends, his thoughts occupied with the story of the Glowstones. He had never imagined the journey would feel so intense, so real. But there was something about the forest that seemed to speak to him, its ancient wisdom stirring something deep within. It wasn't just about finding the stones. It was about understanding the forest, understanding himself, and understanding the bond he shared with Maya and Leo. Suddenly, the path opened up, revealing a large, open space. In the center, there stood an immense stone structure, weathered by centuries of time. The stones, though old and cracked, glowed faintly in the dim light that filtered through the canopy. A sense of awe and reverence filled the air. This was no ordinary ruin. It was something ancient, something sacred. "Look at that," Maya whispered, her voice filled with awe. Before they could move any closer, a low growl sounded from behind them. They froze, turning slowly to face the source of the noise. Emerging from the shadows was a large, shadowy figure. It wasn't a typical animal of the forest. Its body was sleek, its eyes glowing with an ethereal light. It was neither fully animal nor fully human. Its gaze was intense, like it could see into the very core of their beings. "You have come for the Glowstones," the creature said, in a deep, resonant voice that seemed to echo in their minds. "But to claim them, you must prove your worth." The three friends stood there, unsure of what to do. Maya instinctively stepped forward, her heart pounding. "What do you want from us?" she asked, trying to steady her voice. The creature's gaze softened slightly, as if considering her question. "I do not seek to harm you," it said, "but the forest's power cannot be granted to just anyone. To claim the Glowstones, you must show me the strength of your hearts. It is not the power of the stones that you must prove worthy of, but the strength of your bond." Evan took a deep breath, looking at his friends. The path ahead wasn't going to be easy. This was no longer just about finding something. It was about proving something. But what? What exactly did they need to prove? Leo stepped forward, his usual optimism faltering for a brief moment. "We've come all this way together," he said. We've faced every challenge as a team. If that's what you want to see, then we're ready." The creature nodded. Slowly, its glowing eyes never leaving them. "Very well," it said. "You must each face a trial of the heart. You will be tested on your trust, your courage, and your friendship. Only when you have proven these qualities will the glowstones be yours." The ground beneath them began to rumble, and the air seemed to grow heavier still. Evan felt his pulse quicken. This was it. The challenge they had been preparing for had arrived, and it would test them in ways they could never have imagined. Maya looked at her friends, a determined look on her face. "We've made it this far together. We can't stop now." Leo smiled, the confidence in his eyes returning. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." Evan nodded, his heart swelling with pride for his friends. "Let's do this." The creature stepped aside, its eyes glowing even brighter now. "Enter and face your trials. Only then will you be worthy of the glowstones." And so, with hearts full of determination, the three friends stepped forward into the ancient stone structure, unaware of the challenges that awaited them, but confident that their bond would be strong enough to guide them through. As the three friends stepped forward into the ancient stone structure, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The air was thick, with a strange energy, almost as if the very walls of the stone structure were alive, watching them. The pathway in front of them was dimly lit, with strange symbols carved into the walls, glowing faintly as they passed by. The silence around them was deafening. Every step echoed in the emptiness, as though the entire forest was holding its breath. The creature that had appeared before them remained outside, watching from a distance, its glowing eyes still focused on the trio. With a final glance at the beast, Evan turned to his friends. "This is it," he whispered. "We have to face whatever comes next. We do this together." Maya nodded, her expression calm, but filled with a quiet determination. "Whatever the trial is, we'll get through it. We've always done everything together." Leo, whose usual boldness had softened just a touch since their encounter with the creature, clenched his fists in quiet resolve. Together, he repeated more to himself than to anyone else. The air seemed to thicken as they moved deeper into the structure. Then, unexpectedly, the pathway split into 3 separate tunnels, each one darker and more foreboding than the last. At the entrance of each tunnel stood a stone pedestal, each holding a single glowing crystal. Each crystal pulsed with a soft light, as if alive, beckoning them forward. "You must each enter one of these tunnels." A voice rang out, echoing in the cavernous space. It was the creature's voice, but it seemed to come from everywhere. "Each of you will face a trial that will test the very essence of who you are. Only when you succeed will you be worthy of the Glowstones. Do not fear what lies ahead. Face your truth. Maya stepped forward, glancing at her two friends before choosing the tunnel on the left. "I'll go first," she said softly. "Stay close, but don't follow me." Evan and Leo watched as Maya disappeared into the darkness of her chosen path. Evan's heart clenched. He knew Maya was strong, but this was different. This was a trial, not just for her body, but for her heart. Leo squeezed Evan's shoulder gently. "She'll be okay. She's strong." Evan nodded, though a small part of him remained uncertain. As Maya's figure disappeared completely, he felt the weight of the journey settle into his chest. Now, it was their turn. Maya's trial began as soon as she entered the tunnel. The path was narrow, winding, and completely dark, save for the soft, ethereal glow coming from the crystal in her hand. As she moved forward, she felt an overwhelming sense of isolation. The air was heavy, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were closing in. Her heart raced as whispers seemed to echo from the shadows. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of her, standing tall, its form shrouded in darkness. The figure stepped forward and in a somber voice said, "You carry fear with you, Maya. You fear what you are and what you've yet to become. You are not as strong as you think." The words struck Maya like a physical blow. The voice was familiar, and though the figure's face was obscured, she knew it all too well. It was her own voice, her own thoughts, doubts she had carried with her for as long as she could remember. "You've always been afraid of failing," the figure continued. "Afraid that you're not enough, that you'll let everyone down, that you don't deserve to be here. But how long will you run from your own heart?" Maya stood frozen, her breath catching in her throat. She had always prided herself on being strong, on being the protector of her friends. But in this moment, her own doubts were laid bare. Was she truly enough? Was her fear holding her back from achieving what she truly wanted? The figure reached out its hand, glowing with the same light as the crystal in her hand. "Only by embracing your fear can you find your strength." Maya swallowed hard, the weight of her doubts pressing down on her. But then she remembered the strength of her friends, their unwavering belief in her, their trust, and their friendship. She wasn't alone. She never had been. The only way to move forward was to embrace who she truly was, to accept her flaws and her fears, and use them to become stronger. With a deep breath, Maya stepped forward, her hand outstretched, touching the glowing figure. The moment her skin made contact, a burst of light filled the tunnel, and the figure vanished. The path ahead cleared, and Maya continued her journey stronger than before, with a new understanding of herself. Meanwhile, Evan and Leo stood outside, waiting in silence, their hearts filled with anticipation. The air around them seemed to hum with energy, as if the very forest was holding its breath. They had each come here for different reasons, each carrying their own hopes, fears, and dreams. But now, as Maya emerged from her trial, they would soon face their own. "Maya," Leo said, watching as she reappeared at the entrance to her tunnel. "You did it." Maya smiled softly, her eyes filled with understanding. "It wasn't easy, but I'm okay. It's your turn now." Evan took a deep breath, looking at Leo. "Are you ready?" Leo grinned, his usual boldness returning. "Let's see what we're made of." With that, they both entered the next tunnels, ready to face their own trials, knowing that whatever happened, they would face it together. As Evan and Leo walked into their respective tunnels, the world around them shifted again. The ground beneath their feet felt uneven, as if the very earth itself was testing them. The soft glow from the crystals illuminated their path, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. Each step seemed to carry more weight, more responsibility. Neither of them knew what lay ahead, but the certainty that they were not alone in this journey brought them some measure of comfort. Evan's tunnel was cool and silent, the air thick with an otherworldly tension. The light from the crystal in his hand flickered as if hesitant, casting long shadows along the dark path. He felt a deep sense of foreboding, as if someone was watching him. The deeper he ventured, the stronger the feeling grew. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a low whisper that echoed through the tunnel. "Evan, what are you running from?" The voice asked, soft yet unmistakable. Evan froze, his heart racing. "Who's there?" He called out, his voice louder than he intended. The whispering stopped, but the voice soon answered again. This time, it was clearer, stronger. "It's you, Evan. You are running from yourself, running from the truth that lies within you." Evan stepped forward cautiously, his mind racing. He wasn't sure what this trial would bring, but it seemed clear now that it was not a physical challenge, but an emotional one. He had always been the dreamer, the one who wandered with his thoughts, never fully grounded in reality. He had always believed that he wasn't as capable as his friends, that he was the one holding them back. Deep down, he wondered if he was simply not strong enough to face what was required of him. The voice continued, echoing off the walls. "You fear that you're not worthy of the journey you're on. You fear that in the end, you will disappoint those who believe in you." Evan's hands clenched around the crystal, his chest tightening. The truth was undeniable. For years he had struggled with feelings of inadequacy, unsure of his place among his friends, always feeling like an outsider, as though he couldn't keep up. But now here in the darkness, the voice had laid bare his deepest fear. He took a deep breath, looking down at the glowing crystal in his hand. "I am worthy," he whispered to himself, the words strange and unfamiliar, yet comforting. "I am worthy of this journey, worthy of my friends' trust. I will not run from myself anymore." With that, the voice fell silent. The darkness lifted, and the path before him became clear. The trial had not been about physical strength or outward achievements. It was about accepting himself, his place in the world, and the people who believed in him. He could feel the weight in his chest lift, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose. Meanwhile, Leo's trial had begun. As soon as he entered the tunnel, the air felt warmer, charged with an electric energy that made his skin tingle. The walls were lined with glowing symbols pulsating with light. Leo felt an adrenaline rush his heart, pounding with anticipation. He had always thrived on challenges, and the idea of a trial ignited his competitive spirit. "Leo, the fearless," a voice boomed, reverberating through the tunnel. "But how fearless are you? Really? What is it you fear?" Deep down, Leo's breath caught in his throat. "I'm not afraid of anything," he replied confidently, though his voice trembled slightly. The voice laughed, a deep, mocking sound that echoed in every corner of the tunnel. "You're afraid of losing, Leo. Afraid of not being enough. Always the brave one on the outside, but on the inside, you're terrified of failure." Leo's heart skipped a beat. He had never spoken of this fear aloud, not even to his friends. He prided himself on being the one who always stepped up, always took the lead. But there was a truth he had never been willing to face, that deep down he feared failure. He feared the moment when he wouldn't be able to live up to the expectations of those around him. The light from the crystal in his hand flickered, as if to emphasize the weight of those words. He stopped in his tracks, the realization hitting him harder than he expected. The tunnel seemed to stretch on forever, the path ahead shrouded in darkness, and Leo couldn't help but feel small in that moment. "I'm not afraid to fail," he said, his voice firm, despite the doubts rising within him. "I'm afraid of letting my friends down, of not being the person they think I am." The tunnel seemed to pause, as if waiting for him to understand the depth of what he had just admitted. Then the voice spoke again, but this time it was softer, almost kind. "The fear you carry is not yours alone. Every person carries doubt, but it is how we face that fear that defines us. you are more than your fear. Your courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward despite it. Leo stood there, taking a deep breath. The words resonated in his chest, and he understood. He didn't have to be perfect. He didn't have to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. What mattered was that he faced his fear, that he kept moving forward, just as he always had. The path ahead cleared the tunnel opening into a vast space. Leo could feel the weight of his fear lifting, replaced with the realization that he didn't need to be invincible. He only needed to keep trying, to keep moving, and to trust in the strength of his friends. When both trials had ended, the three friends reunited outside the structure. The air was lighter now. The oppressive atmosphere that had filled the tunnels, gone. Each of them stood taller, as though the trials had opened something within them, something they had never known they had. Maya, who had been waiting for her friends, looked at them with a knowing smile. "How was it?" she asked softly, her voice full of warmth. Evan stepped forward, first his gaze steady. "It was about accepting who I am, understanding that I'm enough just as I am." Leo nodded, a grin slowly spreading across his face. "It was about facing my fears. I realized it's okay to be scared. What matters is moving forward anyway." Maya smiled, proud of them both. "And now we're ready." Together, they stepped forward once more, stronger than ever, knowing that the greatest challenge was not the one before them, but the one they had already faced within themselves. After their trials, the trio stood together in the clearing, hearts full, but still unsure of what awaited them next. They had faced their deepest fears, their own insecurities, and come through stronger than before. But there was still one final test, the one that would prove whether they were truly worthy of the Glowstones, the ancient stone structure. Before them loomed larger than ever, its worn surface etched with strange, glowing symbols. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for them to make their next move. The once ominous silence had faded, replaced by a peaceful stillness that hung heavily in the air. "Are we ready?" Maya asked, her voice calm but heavy with anticipation. Leo, always the first to act, grinned. "I've been ready since we stepped into the forest. Let's finish what we started." Evan nodded, his gaze steady. "We've come so far. I know we're ready." As they stepped forward, the ground beneath their feet rumbled gently, as if acknowledging their presence. The creature that had guided them through the forest's challenges suddenly appeared, its glowing eyes watching them with an expression of quiet approval. "You have faced your trials." The creature's voice rumbled deep and resonant as it slowly circled around them. "You have proven your strength, courage, and friendship. But there is one last thing to consider. The creature paused, and Evan felt a knot form in his stomach. Despite everything they had already faced, there was still an underlying sense of uncertainty. The final trial is not about strength, the creature continued, but about sacrifice. To claim the Glowstones, you must be willing to give something up. A piece of your heart, a part of yourselves that you hold dear. What are you willing to sacrifice to protect the forest and the bond you share? The question hung in the air, the weight of it sinking deep into their hearts. It wasn't about physical strength or bravery. It was about the essence of who they were. What could they give up? What was the cost of truly understanding the power of the forest, the lessons it had taught them? Maya was the first to speak, her voice steady. I've always been the cautious one. I've held back, afraid of what might happen if I give too much. But now I understand. The forest has shown me that I need to trust not just in myself, but in my friends. And I'm willing to give up that fear, to trust fully, without hesitation. Leo, his usual confidence tempered with a quiet sincerity, stepped forward next. I've always tried to be the one who carries the weight, who keeps pushing forward without showing weakness. But I've learned that it's okay to lean on others. It's okay to show vulnerability. I'm willing to give up the need to always be strong, to let my friends in when I need them. Evan's voice was softer than the others, but no less firm. I've always dreamed of something greater, something beyond the ordinary. But in doing so, I've neglected the present, the people I care about. I've learned that true greatness isn't found in a distant dream. It's found in the here and now, in the moments we share. I'm willing to give up my obsession with the future to focus on what truly matters. As they look, the creature's form seemed to shift and change its eyes, glowing brighter. The air grew warmer, as though their words had ignited something deep within the forest itself. Your sacrifices have been heard, the creature said, its voice now filled with a kind of reverence. You have proven yourselves not just in strength, but in heart. The Glowstones are yours. With those words, the ground before them shifted, revealing a hidden chamber deep within the stone structure. In the center of the room lay 3 glowing stones, each one pulsing with a soft, ethereal light. The colors of the stones were unlike anything they had seen before, vibrant hues that seemed to shift and change with every movement of light. Maya stepped forward, her heart beating fast, but her steps steady. She reached out and touched the first stone, feeling a warmth spread through her fingers, a connection between herself and the forest that she had never felt before. Leo was next, his hand trembling slightly as he reached for the second stone. As soon as his fingers made contact, a rush of energy filled him, and he felt a sense of clarity, as though the weight of the world had been lifted from his shoulders. Finally, Evan stepped forward, his heart full of gratitude and wonder. He reached for the third stone, and as his hand touched it, a wave of peace washed over him. The world seemed to slow, and for a moment he felt completely at peace, as though the forest and everything in it were one with him. Together, the three friends stood, each holding a glowing stone, the power of the forest now pulsing through them. They had proven their worth, not by what they had done, but by what they had learned about themselves and each other. Their bond was stronger than ever, and they knew that the forest's magic would always be a part of them. The creature, now no longer a threat, nodded in approval. You have succeeded. The Glowstones are now yours to protect and share. But remember, true strength lies not in the stones themselves, but in the heart that holds them. With those final words, the creature faded into the shadows of the forest, leaving the three friends alone in the now peaceful clearing. They stood in silence for a moment, taking in the significance of what had just happened. They had come here searching for something physical, something they could hold in their hands. But what they had truly found was something much greater: the power of friendship, the strength to face their fears, and the courage to change. Evan looked at Maya and Leo, a smile forming on his face. We did it. We really did it. Maya grinned, her eyes shining. Together. Leo, the last to speak, nodded, his voice full of warmth. And we always will be. The three of them stood together, their hearts full of love and gratitude, knowing that the bond they shared would last forever. No matter where their journey took them next, they would face it together as they always had. Through every trial, every fear faced, and every bond strengthened, these three friends discovered that true power lies within the heart. The forest's mysteries were only the beginning, but the greatest lesson was the strength they found in each other. No matter what challenges the future holds, they've learned that together they can overcome anything. And so their journey continues.